On February 20th, 1991, 3,200 clerical workers at the University of Minnesota cast an historic vote, electing AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, to represent them in collective bargaining. After a year of tough negotiations, the union signed a contract with the university on May 14, 1992.
Hi.
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 How are you guys?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Fine.
Good.
I wanted you to meet Kathy.
Yeah, hi.
This is Kathy Kleckner, Sandy,
Hi. Sandy?
and Shirley.
Shirley, nice to meet you.
Kathy is chair of the organizing committee, so she needs to literally know everybody
All
in every
3,000 of us?
of the U, and she's also a steward of in the medical area.
I work in the eye
71 cents makes a grown woman holler. They give you a degree, it's a paycheck they steal.
Where previous organizing drives had failed, AFSCME succeeded in building a union through a distinctive approach. They focused first on building a community among workers, rather than organizing simply to win an election. Almost no literature was used. Instead, organizers met one-on-one with employees. And the focus was not on specific issues. The union was presented as a voice for workers to empower themselves.
We organize based on the belief that change is made through relationships and not in isolation. And we are here today, university-wide, from Duluth, from 1919, from St. Paul, from the West Bank. We are here, once again, breaking through that isolation. We are here today to make sure that important and even seemingly small decisions are not made in isolation.
One of the things that's really concerned me is that I don't feel like we've been part of the women community. You know, I think there's been a separation between, well, there's still that hierarchy even amongst women, and, you know, I think, you know, we're really good at breaking down those barriers.
Well, and it was clear that they see us as being very important to being able to do that.
Well, I think
One of the things that I constantly talk to central administration or anybody that will listen about is the fact that there are good situations within the university, and what we need to do is go and look at why those work. You know, rather than hiring outside consultants to fix
I
it,
can tell you.
popularize why, you know.
Well, I can tell you why they work. They work if the individual person running it has got agency and allows individuals underneath them to have agency. Not
So yeah, any list updates and then sure. You know what to do from there. Yeah. So and then just in case you ran out of time here.
I know who she is. She's from Bellevue, Minnesota, a town 15 miles from my hometown. And I think my mother has some relatives, one of her cousins.
3 years ago, hardly any of these people knew each other. And we started out working together as a whole bunch of university employees to create an organization of employees for employees to get all of these things that we never really knew that everybody else was thinking about at the same time. And we're here. The clericals did it. They have a contract, and now it's the tech's turn. We'd like to start this card drive out by having the techs come up and put your cards into the fishbowl, and we'll get this card drive on a roll.
Having organized the clericals, AFSCME is now organizing to give technical and professional staff the protection of a union contract.
There is a common theme, I think, that is involved in this struggle to get a collective bargaining agreement. Whether it's American Linen in Hibbing, or the Normandy Hotel in Minneapolis, or the University of Minnesota, the time is now. Thank you very much.
Together, put the heart back in the youth, for the union makes us strong. Solidarity.
Hello, welcome to Minnesota at Work. My name is Howard Kling. I'm with the Labor Education Service, University of Minnesota, and today we have with us three organizers, former clerical workers at the University of Minnesota who were directly involved in the organizing drive you just saw a piece of. Over here we have Gladys McKenzie, who is a business rep of Local 3800 of AFSCME at the university. We have here Marianne Beneke, she's the secretary of Local 3800. And on my right is Lori Peterson, business rep of 3800 also. And we're real happy to have them here and hope to have a discussion mostly about the style and principles of this very successful organizing drive. I guess, you know, Gladys, you were in on this maybe the earliest or thought about it. How did this all get started?
It really got started about 12 years ago when a group called Concerned University Employees, which was made up of clerical employees, technical employees, professional employees, and some supervisors, started thinking about ways to have more of a voice in the university community, and eventually decided to try to unionize. I remember that one of our members came into a a Q meeting and said, gee, I think we ought to unionize. And for a lot of people, it was a very scary thing. So we went about this huge process of finding a union to work with, and because we were part of a university community, we formed a search committee and interviewed various unions and finally decided that AFSCME was the best fit for us. We were highly impressed with the organization in the state of Minnesota. We wanted to work with a union that we would not have to explain our issues to as mainly women in the workplace. And we also thought that AFSCME was an organization that would make room for us to do something that felt right to us. And the first organizing effort lasted for about maybe 9 months at the most, and it was quite focused on getting enough authorization cards to hold an election, which we weren't successful in doing, although we were fairly close to the goal of 30%. The drive, the first one, ended in about 1983, and I left the university in 1985, but always with the goal of organizing the university. I eventually ended up working at the state of Minnesota, and from 1983 until the end of the 80s, there was a tremendous amount of organizing that was going on at other universities. And I credit the successes at Yale and at Harvard universities with our ability really to come back in 1989 and organize at the University of Minnesota and be successful at it. There was a lot more confidence, I think, in the labor movement that universities could indeed be organized. A lot had been learned about how women organize, I think that there had also been quite a bit of change, not for the better, within the university community, and more workers were interested in finding out about union organization.
Marianne, you were there, what, 30?
I've been at the 31 years.
31 years?
August 14th of 61, I started at this great institution.
Right. And now, so you were there when the earlier efforts.
Yes, I was, and I remember going to lots of meetings and things, and I was just really sitting on the fence back then. And I remember even thinking about the issue of paying fair share as a non-member of a union, thinking, golly, that's not fair. You know, how can it be fair if you have to pay something? I mean, I don't even hardly know myself now, thinking how I thought then. But anyway, I've come a long way, and it's certainly a learning process. I'm glad I am where I am. But
what brought you that long way? I mean, what was the change, do you think?
Oh, a lot of things that were generally happening at the university. For one thing, all the step increases were taken out of our salaries, and just the general treatment, the extreme heavy workloads, and sort of the disrespect for workers and just a lot of changes in administration and I think even the commitment to focus. That whole thing always just sort of blew me away from first I heard about it, and as I saw it happening and what was happening to us as workers, and just sort of seeing the university in not a so good light really made me know that there needed to be an organization of workers, and that's when I met Gladys McKenzie at the meeting in August of, I think, of '89.
My first day on staff at the
got
union.
going, organizing from that day, you know.
So this is a success story. Your first day on the job, and you met
I met Mary Ann Beneke. That's
was
right.
it, huh?
It was meant to be.
That's great. All right. Well, Lori, what about you? How long have you been there?
Well, I had been working at the university it was 3 years actually for me. And in general, I think it was, I had called, Gladys was one of the first people I spoke to from AFSCME, so I wasn't familiar with the earlier efforts to organize, but I was very impressed with the fact that Gladys came in and spoke to us as people, and there was a common language being spoken, and it wasn't the thing that impressed me most was the idea of taking part of a process and taking part in decision making and of self-empowerment. For me, I had been a clerical many years before that, and the importance of bringing respect to the work that's done was real important to me, and having a voice, and that resonated with me. It was very important.
Did that surprise you that a union spoke the language that you could think of? I mean, it sounds like, you know, that
it was kind of new. Yeah, I'd been in a couple of, I had been a waitress at one point, was with the union there, and actually was a clerical in Boston with the UAW, and most of, you know, there I was a little more not as connected, although I definitely understood the importance of the union. I didn't take part actively as I did this time, and it was the common language that was just natural to me.
Gladys, what kind of, what is this language we're talking about? I mean, I was just realized, what was the change from the early organizing to the, what turned out to be the successful model that you used? I mean, what did you do?
Well, what I learned the first time around was that the most successful things that we did in the early campaign were things that had to do with building community and people talking with one another. We had started out in that early campaign with a newsletter distribution system and went to mailing of the newsletter, and I remembered that as an experience of loss, that we actually had in some way moved backwards in our ability to know one another as workers. And I think that the language is about shunning the idea of the union as a third party, understanding that you're not there to have an election, although the election is very important and we believe in winning elections, but that what you're really doing is trying to build and construct an organization that is made up of individuals. And in order to do that you have to have a very firm respect for each and every individual. We had rules, and we still do. We never label anybody as anti-union, for instance. We say that people may consider themselves to be anti-union, they may think that they don't like us, but we think that the idea of unionism holds up really well under close scrutiny, and that the more information that people have about the union and the more that they're able to have a voice in the construction of the union, the more quickly that they come to feel themselves as having a kinship with the whole idea of unionism. And I think that was a really important part and continues to be an important part of what we do.
Right, so I mean, yeah, I know that you certainly don't necessarily focus on issues, right? And that's
right.
what, I mean, did that feel different to you? I mean, what your personal experience like coming to the union? How did, basically, I mean, there's a model, I think, that's, I don't know if it's traditional because it may be different from something many years ago, but a model that issue-oriented, problems in the workplace, there may be places that are just really ripe for unionism or something, And this seems a little different, right? I mean, and maybe,
Yeah, that's,
I think that again, it's having respect for people. I have been involved in situations where the union feels that all it needs to do is latch on to the right issue, or it needs to be able to articulate to the workers in a workplace what their issues are. I think that we believe that workers know what their issues are, that they change all the time, and that what workers are really interested in is having a vehicle that gives them optimism about the ability to make change no matter what the issue is. And so we concentrated on principles and values, and you know, I'm sure that Lori and Mary Ann can talk about what some of those are, or at least what struck a chord with them.
yeah. For me, it was the idea of having mutual respect in the workplace was a large one for me, and the sense that what felt right to me was that I could feel proud of the work I was doing, and I wanted to be able to find a way collectively to represent ourselves. And it was the idea of, to me, that's very empowering, and as a woman it's important to me too, that part of the thing that really attracted me to this, some of the value of constant learning was important to me, that we learn this together and we learn as we go, and change is constant, and you want to be a part of the change that's happening and not have it happen to you. So the values of mutual respect and
self-representation was part of it. You know, that we talk a lot about self-representation, the idea that as adults we should represent ourselves in all things. We shouldn't turn it over to somebody else. We shouldn't have other people making decisions for us. And that in fact better decisions are made when we do involve ourselves. And that kind of idea projects the union as a very positive organization, and one that you can belong to even if your work experience is a good one. And that was very important in the organizing too, because we would run into lots of people that sort of thought, well, gee, you have to be angry or you know, hate this particular employer in order to want to be a union member. And we said no. The University of Minnesota is an employer like any other employer. They're not great and they're not awful. What's really critical here is whether we represent ourselves or not.
So what the style, you know, I understand is a sort of one-on-one or person-to-person. You don't use a lot of literature. I was reading. See, I read a little bit before. And also,
you use that literature?
Yeah, I read it. No, that's a great little, it's a great interview with you and Chris at Rondo, in fact, that I realized some of that from. But how does that work? I mean, it seems like an awful lot of work. I mean, sometimes.
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun.
Okay.
It really is a lot of fun getting to know other workers, you know. I mean, I just like to know people, and it's so wonderful to get to know people, and not just know somebody has a phone voice or, you know, just to really, it's just a sense of empowerment and community, to getting to know one another. It really breaks down so many barriers, just getting to know folks and talking to them. I guess when I go, many times I don't even consider actually or formally going out organizing. It's sort of like on my own, just going out and talking to people, getting to know people as a person, or one-on-one as a friend, or, you know, trying to just to find out, just to get a dialogue going with them and develop a relationship.
Yeah, that was important to me. It was an element of trust that I wasn't conscious of at the time, but it was the people I knew that really, that's why I became so active. I would have always, I think, been supportive, but I became, it's a very different sort of organization to me when I actually become a part of it, and the organizing goes on. The community it's a community building, very.
We in fact believe that our democracy comes from talking to each other. We believe that every single person, union member or fair share, has the absolute right to have somebody that they know, that they trust, that they can go to for information about the union or to share an idea or a thought. And that kind of democracy doesn't happen spontaneously. It really has to be built up, and that's what organizing is about. But it's a very simple idea of one step at a time, one person making a decision to go and get to know the person that works next to them or in the building across the way. And we were organizing a workplace that had, I don't know how many buildings it has. How many buildings are there? 300, 500?
Hundreds.
In many cities.
And,
all
how many
campuses,
people are in the unit, the bargaining unit?
3,200.
That's what we,
That's the clericals,
And
right?
actually,
clericals,
right, when we started out again in 1989, we really set out to organize about 8,000 employees, clerical, technical, and professional, and we had a wonderful committee that was inclusive of all three of those groups, and we are still organizing in those other units. The election that we had in the clerical unit was sort of a day in the life of the organization for everybody, no matter what unit you were part of, and we really feel that we you know, are sort of waiting for our coworkers in the other two units to become an official part of the organization that they're a part of really now.
You have a drive going on now with the technical workers, right?
Right, and we're involved in that, and some I'm doing phone banking and talking to folks wherever I can, and I think it's really, we need to remember that we're all part of this, you know, and what we just really need to continue.
Now, are there as many women involved in the technical unit? Is there, I mean, how does that fall out? I mean, because one question I know would be on people's minds is this just a, you know, a woman's way of organizing? That's been raised before, I guess. I mean, is it?
I think that it's something that comes very easily for women. We don't seem to have a lot of problem talking with one another. And I think that the idea that change is built through relationships and not through paper and not through isolation is very easy for us. But I don't know that I would necessarily call it women's organizing. Men in our organization value what we do as much as any of the women, I think. And they certainly, as part of a workforce that, at least in the clerical unit, is 93% women, they face the same kinds of problems that women in general in the workforce face. They are really their issues. The men that I talk to in the labor movement are very receptive, I think, to the kind of organizing that we do. And I've always sort of wanted to get my hands on a private sector factory in order to,
see if it
you
would
know,
work.
I think that your organizing tactics may be a little bit different, you know, public sector to private sector, but I think that ultimately if you want a strong, viable union, you have to find a way for people to know each other, to build a community, for people to talk to one another.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I mean, most workers feel powerless, and most workers feel somewhat isolated, certainly depending on their job, I think. But I would want a voice. I mean, you know, those things would certainly connect, and something I liked in that article as well is that they all have stories, right? And I like that idea that change starts with telling a story.
Right, important. I think we should write a storybook. Worth so many volumes.
And that's really also, I mean, that is really something that resonates with a lot of feminist literature as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, women's stories and how they need to tell them. So it's kind of nice how that fits in terms of this. But
yeah, it's not surprising to me that it is definitely women that are developing this kind of organizing or have played a big role in its development. And we certainly, I think, have learned a lot and owe a lot to the feminist movements. And storytelling, I think, does come also very easily to women. we appreciate it. One of the things that Chris Rondo from Harvard talks about a lot is the fact that every person really does have a story, and that an important part of organizing is respecting each individual's story and giving them the sense that it's important and that they have an environment where it can be told. They spent a lot of time in their first round of negotiations at Harvard telling their stories to management. They went through a whole transition period where they did that. And I think that it had a very positive effect on their ability to negotiate the kind of contract that they did.
I also know, I mean, just to shift, I mean, I noticed that it seems as though you have both a intellectual and emotional connection to the union, or you know, in terms of maybe issues and other things. Is that right? I mean, is that how it works? Is that why people join unions?
I think so, and people both have to come to it both ways. And I think some people maybe come through one thing first and one's the other way. But I mean, it's really important that people do both, I think.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very again, it's that element of trust too. For me, is you can intellectually, even for myself, I knew intellectually why I would support a union, but then the issue of trusting and getting to know that actual organization on a very deep, heartfelt level came with knowing the people, and that was a very deep commitment when that came together for me.
It's like creating a culture.
Very life-changing. Yeah,
Exactly.
I feel like like what is it, chemically changed. I mean, it really changed my life and the way I see myself in a very, very good way.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's almost it here, and thanks a lot. I wish we had another more time, because there's a lot of issues involved, and it's fun, and you're doing great stuff. And we've wandered around with you a little bit to some of the organizing. We have a good time. And as you say, people have a sense of humor. There's really life in it. So anyway, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate all of you coming. And that'll do it. That's Minnesota at Work. And thanks a lot.
Have you been hurt at work? Wonder if your claim is being handled properly? Call the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. The call is free, and with over 80 years' experience in workers' compensation, you know you'll be getting the right advice. Whether you're an injured worker or one of your employees has been injured, you need to know your rights. Call the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry at 1-800-DIAL-DLI. That's 1-800-DIAL-DLI.
This is my friend, a skier. Like thousands of other African-American children, he has a blood disease and needs a marrow transfusion. It's simple to help. You start by taking a free blood test. Please call the National Marrow Donor Program at 1-800-654-1247.
Twin Cities Construction. Experienced, professional, flexible. The Twin City Area Labor Management Council reflects the nationwide growth in labor management cooperation of the last decade. During this time, the Luck Committee was created to serve as an alliance between labor, the users, and contractors to settle disputes before problems arise. Our satisfied customers understand on time and on budget. Twin Cities Construction, building the skyline of tomorrow through cooperation today.